I'm Batman. I mean, I'm vengeance. I mean, I'm hope. Anyway, whether he's Batman, vengeance, or hope, the new Batman movie, The Batman, finally is here, and today I'm gonna get my thoughts on it. So without further ado, let's get into my review. Hello everybody. Yeah, I didn't do that before, so I had to do it here. So, I'm on spring break, which is why I am on this set and not in my dorm room, but you probably do not care about that. You want to hear about my thoughts on The Batman, and right off the bat, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed The Batman. I think they did a lot of things really good, with, the depiction of Batman and the Riddler and the different villains in it, different characters in it, the way they handled the story, I think was very good, and I think it's one of the best Batman movies there is, but I'm not going to do a non-spoiler review like I usually do with doing reviews. I just think this movie is good. I think you should go see it if you're a Batman fan, and yeah, I will say, it's 3 hours long, and it feels like it. I think that's my only complaint about this movie, is that it does kind of drag along a little bit. I like it, and I think I appreciate it for taking things slowly, with the way they're kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle slowly together, but at the same time, it feels like a 3 hour long movie, and I think if you compare it to something like Endgame, which was also 3 hours long, Endgame didn't really feel like 3 hours, because there was so much happening in it, and there was so much that, it was the ending of the Infinity Saga, and you needed to kind of have 3 hours to, do everything that you had to do in it, and it just didn't really feel slow. Like, the only part of that movie that felt slow was, the beginning, when you're really just, kind of showing the state of the world 5 years after the snap, but once you get into the time heist and, the big final battle at the end, it's just, it's going on a good pace where you really don't feel the 3 hour runtime. Here, though, it's completely different. You feel the 3 hour runtime. You're like, alright, this is good, but, come on, can we kind of figure this thing out already? Can we, we get to, the big battle, where the Riddler's plan finally, comes together, and we figure out what it is? Again, I enjoyed it, and I definitely appreciate that they took things slow and they didn't just kind of, race through plot lines, but, plot points, but at the same time, I feel like you could have shaved off, at least a half an hour of this thing, and, it may have been a better experience. Of course, that's probably just me, just kind of being, more accustomed to the MCU, as I just used Endgame as a reference example, I'm a little bit more accustomed to the Marvel format, of movies, and I think for what this movie was aiming to be, it did what it was trying to do perfectly, but it's just something that I'm just kind of not as accustomed to with a superhero blockbuster. That's just me. My only complaint, really, but it's not really a complaint, it's more of just on my part, just not really, not really being into the slow-paced pace of this movie. Anyway, though, to get into the movie, I think they did a good job with the introduction of Batman as this kind of, he's in the shadows, or he is the shadows, and using the bat signal as, on the one hand, it's a signal for Batman to come and, because someone needs help, but at the same time, it's as a warning for the criminals to be like, oh, Batman's gonna be coming, we gotta, we don't want to run into him, and, showing, different crimes going on throughout the city, and kind of not being sure where Batman is and which crime he's going to show up at. I think that was very cool, and of course having him finally show up, um, and I think his entrance was cool. I think you know, him beating up the one guy. Of course, that was in the trailer. Him beating up the one guy and going, "I'm vengeance." But that was so cool. That being like kind of the first thing we see him do. Um, I think they did a good job with introducing Batman in this version of Batman. I would say the action was very good, although I think since this was a 3 hour long movie, kind of a slow pace. While there was quite a bit of action sequences in it, since it was 3 hours long, you kind of had like a lot of time between action sequences, and so that kind of made it feel like there wasn't as much action as there was. It kind of made it feel like there wasn't a lot of action, even though there was, again, quite a bit of action, and it was really good, all the action that they had. But at the same time, it kind of felt like it was a little light on action, just because of how much time there was between each sequence, and also I think the fact that a lot of the really cool action sequence moments were shown in the trailers, which I think that's mostly because the fact that this movie got delayed so much that the marketing had to go on for longer, and you couldn't just release the same trailer, the same things in the trailers over and over again. You kind of had to show some new stuff with each new trailer, and that kind of caused there to be a lot of moments that were really cool. Kind of be like, okay, well, we saw that in the trailer. Like there weren't that many moments that I was like, oh, that was pretty cool, and it wasn't in the trailer. Like a lot of the really cool moments, I was like, oh, yep, this is from the trailer, and this is where it fits in the movie. So I think like the only action sequence that didn't have things shown from it in the trailers was the final battle. But I think everything else had something in it that was in the trailers, at least one thing in it from the trailers, and so that kind of made it so like the action sequences didn't feel as impactful, because a lot of the really cool things were already shown in the trailers. Again, that's like not a complaint against the movie. That's more a complaint against the marketing for it, and just kind of the situation that it was in with, the pandemic, and having to push it forward, or, delay it so much that, kind of messed up the ability for there to be a lot of big moments saved for the final movie. I definitely think that, somebody watching this movie like a few years from now, not even having seen a trailer, just going like watching through all the Batman movies and seeing this one, it might be a little bit better of an experience for them, as they don't have the memory of the stuff from the trailers kind of going into it. Of course, again, when there was action, it was brutal action, and it was very well done action. So I'm hoping that like in the future movies, and with this iteration of Batman, we'll get a little bit more action, because I think that this Batman has really good capacity for really good action, and the director does a good job at executing the action sequences. So I think it would be really, really cool to see some more action sequences in the future. But anyway, moving on to talking about Robert Pattinson as Batman, and I think he did a good job. I think he definitely played a really good Batman. Of course, the trailers had sold me on him as Batman, and what I was kind of looking for in this movie was him to sell me on his Bruce Wayne. Again, trailers sold me on his Batman. The whole "I'm vengeance" thing and beating up the one guy. I mean, that right there sold me on his Batman. I was like, okay, he could be a good Batman. But as Bruce Wayne, the trailers hadn't sold me on that, and I was looking for that in the movie, and I think he did a pretty good Bruce Wayne. Of course, as usual with Batman movies, Bruce Wayne isn't really focused on that much. I think the Dark Knight trilogy focused on Bruce Wayne a lot more than a lot of other Batman stuff had, but I think this one, it really didn't focus that much on Bruce Wayne. Of course there were scenes where Bruce Wayne was in it, but like I don't know, like there wasn't as much of a focus. A lot of the movie was him just going around as Batman, and that is partially the reason. Like partially the reason for that is just like Bruce Wayne isn't as relatable of a character. He's not really that relatable. You take someone like Peter Parker in the Spider-Man movies. Peter Parker is really relatable. He's relatable as this high schooler or this recent graduate of high school, trying to just balance his life, figure out how to balance his real life stuff with being a superhero, and that's something that everybody can relate to on some level. I mean, of course, the whole superhero part, being bitten by a radioactive spider and getting spider powers, and fighting supervillains and trying to save New York City all the time. That's not that's not relatable. But the part about balancing his life, even though again most people watching the movie aren't superheroes bitten by radioactive spiders, having to balance a superhero life with a normal life, but trying to balance different aspects of your life is a relatable thing. And so you can kind of relate to him on that level, relate to Peter Parker on that level. But with Bruce Wayne, you can't really relate to billionaire playboy orphan with trauma as much. It's kind of, it's compelling that, he's a billionaire playboy orphan who at night dresses up like a bat and saves Gotham City and fights supervillains. That's a compelling idea, but it's not like it's not like a character that you can relate to, very easily. And so a lot of Batman movies, a lot of Batman media kind of focuses more on the Batman aspect of Batman. Makes Batman more of like, just focus on Batman. Because it's a lot cooler to see Batman beating up people than focusing on Batman or Bruce Wayne dealing with his trauma and, being a billionaire playboy who's secretly, a vigilante. Like, I don't know, it's just not as interesting to connect with Bruce Wayne. It's not as easy to connect with Bruce Wayne as a character than it is just to see Batman, beating up people. I think, though, the stuff that does involve Bruce Wayne in this movie, Robert Pattinson does a good job with, but a lot of it focuses on the Batman. Another thing that this movie does that I really appreciate is showing the detective aspect of Batman. Putting together all the pieces of the puzzle of the Riddler's plan. I think they did a really good job with that, of really making this a mystery. A mystery story, trying to, getting pieces of the puzzle given to you, again, with the slow pace of it. I think that's where the slow pace is good, with, letting the mystery play out in, like, a slow way, in, like, a way that, doesn't just feel like you're going from, like, plot point to plot point to plot point, just figuring out things quickly. You kind of, like, let things get developed and let the characters kind of, let the characters and the audience gain the new insight to what the big picture is, in a way that, feels organic and, like, it's developed well. So I think that's where the slow pace is good. However, at the same time, I do kind of feel like it's like, all right, come on, let's get to the point here. But I do appreciate that they went for the whole mystery in this movie and having Batman really do, detective work throughout the movie. Whereas I feel like, other Batman iterations haven't really focused so much on the detective aspect of Batman. There was a little bit of it in the Dark Knight trilogy, but this one really, like, delved into he's a detective. He is, looking at the information and figuring out, okay, how does this, what does this mean? How does this play into the big picture? Figuring out, like, each step to this puzzle of who the Riddler is, where he is, what's his plan, and how to stop him. And I think that was done very well in this movie. I'll move on to some of the minor villains, because obviously the Riddler is the main villain, but you have the Penguin in here also, played by Colin Farrell, which he is unrecognizable. Like, we saw him in the trailers, and everybody's like, he's unrecognizable, and seeing him in the movie too, it's just crazy. Like, you do not see Colin Farrell at all there. Just the way they did the makeup, whatever they did, it just looks like a completely different person. You just see the Penguin. You're just like, this is just a person who's the Penguin. You do not see Colin Farrell at all in there. It really is crazy, what they were able to do there. But I think he did a really good job playing the Penguin. I can't wait to see him in future Batman movies, again, in this universe. I think that would be really fun. I guess he's getting his own spin-off on HBO Max or something, which that's going to be really cool. I can't wait to see more of him being Penguin. I think he did a really good job. I'll move on to Catwoman, which I guess she's not really a villain here. I guess she's really leaning more towards the hero route with this iteration of the character, which I think she did a great job. I think the actress who played her was really good. I think her relationship with Batman was shown well, and I really hope she gets a new mask in future movies. I was hoping she'd get one this movie. Like, when I saw, in the trailers, when they would show her with that mask that she had, I was always like, okay, this has got to be, like, her first time, one of her, first few times going out as Catwoman. She doesn't have, that's just kind of like a first iteration of the mask she has, but I'm sure she'll get a better mask as the movie goes on. She didn't. It was just always that mask throughout the entire thing. I really, really hope she gets a different... I'm sure she will. I'm sure she is going to get a new mask. I'm sure that this isn't going to be, like, the mask that she uses moving forward. I'm sure that eventually she'll get a new mask, but, like, I can't wait to see what that mask looks like, because the mask that she has now really doesn't look good at all. And again, I think that's because she's not really supposed to be wearing the mask that much in this movie. I think there's probably some aspect of it where, same reason why Tobey Maguire's mask always got ripped in the Spider-Man movies. I think it's like, I think there's probably something in, like, an actress's contract where she needs her face to be shown in the movie for a certain amount of the movie. And so, if you have a terrible looking mask, you're not going to have her wear it all the time. So I'm sure, that was probably some aspect of it. I'm hoping, though, that eventually she'll get a really cool looking Catwoman mask or cowl at some point. Anyway, though, let's move on to the Riddler, the main villain of this movie. I think this was really good. I think they did a really good job with this version of the Riddler. It was really dark, the Riddler stuff here, making him just a really dark psychopath. Definitely did a good job bringing him into, the kind of newer way, Batman works, taking him away from the Jim Carrey version from Batman Forever, where, it was Jim Carrey doing his thing.
This is your captain speaking. Please return to your seats. We will be experiencing turbulence.
And Batman, the 60s Batman version of the Riddler, where there was, the riddles were jokes, where it was really campy, and it was just like, it was more just a joke with a punchline.
There were 3 men in a boat with 4 cigarettes and no matches. How did they manage to smoke? They threw 1 cigarette overboard and made the boat a cigarette lighter.
I think this really made it, like, dark. Even if the Riddlers maybe had some humor to them, it was, like, dark humor, and it had, like, meaning to it, some deeper meaning that where he's trying to, bring the corruption of Gotham to light, which I think that was another thing they did really good with this movie, was show the corruption of Gotham City, as usual. Just the corruption where, you have political leaders and DAs and cops that are all corrupt, and figuring out like who is actually good, who is just corrupt, who's working with the mob, the bad guys, and who's just, you know, actually is devoted to helping the city. Just that interesting idea that is present in everything relating to Batman, the corruption of Gotham City. It was shown very well, and I think they did a really good job with having the Riddler bringing that corruption to light. I think the idea of him using social media to, you know, get his followers together to create this uprising to, you know, assassinate the mayor candidate. Yeah, I think it was very interesting having the Riddler use social media in that way. Definitely a realistic concept. And I will say, I do wish that the idea of him having social media was like having social media with a bunch of followers was set up a bit more throughout the movie, because I feel like it was only really shown like a few times. Like, I think a news reporter would be like, oh, when he has social media with this many followers and, you know, blah blah blah, and it's like, you know, it was just something that was like mentioned a few times in like when they would show the news in the movie, but it wasn't something that like was really shown, you know, heavily throughout it. So it just kind of feels like, oh yeah, he does have social media, doesn't he? When he gets, you know, when it gets to the end, and like you were showing that he posted the video on social media, telling all his followers to, when the whole city gets flooded, to go where everybody's gathered and, you know, try to assassinate the mayor. You know, it's just more of just like, oh yeah, right, okay. They did mention before he had social media, but I think it would have been better if they kind of, you know, showed that a little bit more throughout the movie, so it isn't just so like, you know, if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't have like, it just would just kind of feel like it came out of nowhere. But I wish they just set it up a little bit more. But I think that overall it was a really interesting idea to, you know, have him to have like the way he causes the final battle to happen, which he isn't even involved in. He's taken away by the police, locked up, and he is just having his followers go and, you know, try to kill the mayor, and using social media to get them to gather there. I thought that was very interesting, and I think his motivation was shown very well, with him being an orphan and hating Bruce Wayne because he was given all the attention as an orphan, but he's like, you don't know what it means to be an orphan. You were a billionaire. You were in a mansion. Which, okay, one thing I have to say, why the heck did Wayne Manor look like Hogwarts? Did anybody else think that when they were watching the movie? Like, Wayne Manor, it looked like Hogwarts. That could just be just because, you know, the Fantastic Beasts trailer played before the movie started in my theater, but like, I don't know. I felt like it looked like Hogwarts a little bit, Wayne Manor. Anyway, though, back to the Riddler's motivation. You know, hates Bruce Wayne because he was given all the attention. People were like, all sorry for him being an orphan, but he got to live in a mansion. And, you know, that is a very big contrast from the Riddler's experience as an orphan, living in an orphanage with a bunch of other kids all crammed into one room and just not having very good quality of life. But everybody's just focused on Bruce Wayne, the billionaire orphan, who still has a lot of stuff, but nobody's focused on the orphans that are in the orphanage with terrible quality of life. So I thought that was very interesting, showing that motivation for him. And I think that having him flood the city, like, I don't know why, but that just, like, hit so much harder than, like, other Batman villains, like, you know, certainly other Batman villains have, like, done things that have, like, affected the entirety of Gotham City in a very impactful, negative way. But, like, I don't know, like, this, like, I don't know, for some reason, it just, like, struck me like a little bit harder. Just like the idea of like him flooding the entire city. Like I think it just seems like it's just like such a problem that Batman can't fix. Like it's just like yeah, it's just the entire city's flooding. There's nothing you can do about that. It is flooding. You just have to, you know, make sure everybody is safe. And certainly there's property damage. There's people dying there. Certainly there's like terrible effects that are happening as it's being flooded, and it's just like I don't know, like that just seemed like just such like a different thing for a Batman villain to do to Gotham. So I don't know, just it was just very interesting to see that something that you know like I feel like Batman Begins. Ra's al Ghul put this nightmare gas all over Gotham, and people are seeing their worst nightmares, hallucinating their worst nightmares. And it's like, yeah, that's definitely terrible. But like, I don't know, like it just seemed like flooding the city was like, I don't know, it just felt so much bigger than that. I think maybe because it's just like more of just like a realistic thing. Like the only thing unrealistic is setting up the explosives in the different spots to like create that scenario where it gets flooded. But like I don't know, like it just seemed like something that was like I don't know, it just felt really like different than other villains, and it was I don't know, it was interesting the way it played out. And this all leads, of course, to this theme that Batman learns where he goes from I'm vengeance to realizing that he actually gives people hope, and realizing that vengeance is not going to save the city. Inflicting vengeance on the criminals isn't going to change it, but giving people hope is what Batman is truly doing. And, well, there's tons of crime still going on in Gotham City. He's giving the good people of it the hope to move forward. Bruce Wayne feeling like he's not really having an impact on Gotham 2 years, into being Batman, not really having an impact on the city, just kind of still crime going on. There's more crime than ever, and wondering if he's even making a difference, and realizing by the end he is. He's giving people hope, and while there's still a ton of crime going on, he's giving, again, the good people hope to move forward, and truly making a difference in a way that he didn't expect. I thought that was a really good character arc that they had for him throughout the movie, and yeah, I overall really enjoyed this movie. Again, I think it was a little bit too long. I think you could have shortened it a little bit, but at the same time, I do appreciate that they went for this 3-hour runtime to really slow things down and develop things throughout it. And I think that this is one of the better Batman movies, and I really can't wait to rewatch this at some point. I've only seen it once, I saw it last night, and I think that I definitely think this is a movie that watching it more and more, I'll catch more of the details throughout it. I think it's definitely a movie that is like requires multiple watches to get everything that is in it. All of the different details and everything. So I definitely can't wait to rewatch this at some point. And yeah, I overall, again, really enjoy this movie. I think it's one of the best Batman movies there is. I think the Dark Knight trilogy, definitely the Dark Knight, is still better. But I definitely really, really enjoyed this movie. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Batman. Please comment below yours, and remember to give this video a like, subscribing to the channel, maybe check out some of my other videos. And with that said, that's a wrap.